Okay, so maybe today, finally, because we always do like a couple lines, and we've been for the past at least 2 times that we've tried to finish this, we've still been staring down 2 small paragraphs. Okay, so let's see. We are in the Pachad Yitzchak on Purim, the first ma'amar in this book, the first inyan, and we talked about how destructive the impact, the calculated impact of Amalek's engagement with Am Yisrael was before Har Sinai, not on the level of a military engagement, but really rather as to destroy their morale, to encourage and bolster the ability of the nations of the world to reject the impact of God coming back, right? To cool everybody down. That was the word. Asher karcha baderech, they cooled down the jacuzzi, right? Okay, so that we associated with this idea we've been developing of an understanding of mockery, what in the Torah we call leitzanut, and how mockery cannot be rectified but only utterly destroyed, and the rectification happens to those who witness. That's what we've been talking about, all just so we could explain the prophecy of Bilam Harasha, who says that since Reshit Goyim Amalek, since Amalek is the first of nations, Sof Achrito Adei Oved, in Acharit Hayamim, they will not have a rectification. Right, so we tried to understand what this Reshit, what does it mean the first, and we said it can't just mean that they were, in terms of a sequence of events, they were the first to ever give Am Yisrael a hard time, but rather that because there was a first, because they did what they did, that actually affected everything else in a terrible way. Okay, so now, let's Zayin. V'zeh shegilta lanu Torat ba'amalek v'achrito adei oved. Oh, yeah, the last point we made, which is a marvelous point. It goes back to so many things we're always talking about, that such Shlomo raised, that the introduction, we said that Am Yisrael is pitted against Amalek as diametrically opposed spiritual forces. That if we want to talk in the context of what we've been stating here about mockery, etc., the power of Amalek is a force in the world to destroy the world through koach hazilzul, to degrade things by robbing reality of any sort of importance. Okay? Whereas Am Yisrael is all about what we said, koach hahilul, the power of praise. By recognizing God, by enforcing, by finding ways, by supporting and bolstering where importance is truly important. And we talked about it, that's tied in this idea of praise, meaning the ability to give praise is really built on the idea of an awareness of God. And Shlomo said that we're really dat. And we talked about that. We talked about Yetziat Mitzrayim being the inception, the creation of the Jewish people, which the Arizal says is dat. The dat was in Galut itself. And we talked about Pesach being the talking mouth. Pesach, that's the articulation, the Hallel of a recognition of God. Right? So that was the last points we made. That the very essence of Amalek is the uprooting of the power of rebuke from the soul. We talked about how we have Amalek inside of us, and there is a knee-jerk response, a reflex, to push off any demand for us to change our ways. And indeed, this ends up becoming that the Torah explains the problem with Esav. It's not that he sold his birthright. It's that he denigrated it. The Torah reports, it says, Vayivaz, he made it a bizayon. It wasn't that he sold it, it's that his attitude was that it was not important. What was that birthright? To be the priests of humanity to God. Kilomar, that is to say, hitlotetzut min habchora, he made fun of that. It was not important to him in life. Leitz taka ze Amalek. When we say to strike the mocker, that's Amalek. Okay. And that is what the Torah is revealing to us when it reports regarding Amalek, that its end is total annihilation. Even though in the end of days, after Mashiach comes, it will be an era that all the nations of the world will have some sort of rectification. In some way, they will be integrated and included in a final vision of humanity that's meant to fulfill its purpose with God. Mikol makom, en Amalek beklal. Nevertheless, Amalek does not have a seat at the table. Since in the era of the end of days, there is no room for anything which has not been rectified. Therefore, it turns out that when you want to talk about the total obliteration of Amalek, you talk about the end, when they're not there. It's just a fact. Every rebuttal, every rebuke, every word of correction, it is an appeal to fix that which has been messed up. L'taken ha'kilkul. Ve'alkein, and therefore, kol kilkul, every destructive, anything that's messed up, that's not the way it should be, that's ruined, afilu hayoter gerua, no matter how bad it is, she'en be'atzmiuto hitnagdut litfiato shel hatikun, any aspect of reality that's messed up, that does not have a repelling, a need to repel correction. He's got hope. Meaning, you're good, you're kilkul, the amount of destruction that a particular aspect of reality has experienced is not what determines whether it can get better or not. The fact that something's messed up, that's okay. It has hope, as long as it's willing to listen to correction. But if inherently inside of it has no inability, it pushes away any sort of appeal to self-improve, then it's lost. That's the critical thing. So here, Amalek, this is just another way of bringing out how Amalek cannot have any tikkun by definition, because the one thing that's bugging them doesn't allow them, it's the anti-tikkun, it's the anti-correct yourself issue that they have. Okay? Vehem hem advarim kol tochacha arei hitfiya litikun hakilkul ve'al kein kol kilkul afilu hayoter garua she'en ba'atzmiyato hitnagdut litfiyato shel hatikun memela still yesh lo tikva, there is hope liot mitatken, there is hope that it can be rectified. Aval kilkul kazeh, but some sort of terrible flaw like this, she'atzmiuto, that its very essence, hi akirat kocha shel tfiyat hatikun, it is the uprooting of any force for improvement. Obviously, it's not going to have any hope to enter at all in the rectification. And it is well understood, specifically the era of the final rectification, only then truly can there be an ibadon shel Amalek, a loss of Amalek. That means he's going to last till then. Va'achrito, but in the end, his end, which is the end, adei oved, he will be totally destroyed. Aval halo koach haleitzanut shel Amalek anusu b'kir ha'batya. The power of mockery of Amalek is hidden in the cooling of the bathtub. Dahainu mipnei heyoto harishon l'milchama. Since he was what he means to say is the reveal that the power of Amalek is specifically leitzanut, that's explained to us in the description of the cooling of the bathtub. Since he was the first to battle, and this is basically what we're reading right now, is just a restatement and a packaging altogether of everything we talked about. He's bringing the end with the beginning. He's saying that the prophecy of Bilam that has Reshit Goyim Amalek, right? It's V'achrito adei oved. He's explaining them now in the context of everything we talked about mockery. Okay? V'zehu perusho shel hamshech hakatuv, and that's the explanation of the continuation of the verse. Reshit goyim Amalek, the beginning, the first of all nations to object to Yisrael is Amalek. The achrito, and his end, which will only be at the very end of time, Adei Oved is total destruction, because the only things that will be present then will be things that have received their rectification. The Davka Mishum de Madregas Amalek Hi Madregas Reshit Goyim, this appellation of Reshit Goyim is really, you have to see it as a description of what they're all about. Not what they did, but what they're all about. Meaning the significance here is that they rushed to be Reshit Goyim in order to rob Am Yisrael of their significance, not because of it wasn't about the military engagement itself. And therefore, Memela en lo achrit, because that is their status, they have no end. They have no standing at the end. Okay. Vayavo Amalek vayilachem em Yisrael berfidim. So at the end of Bishalach is where the Torah tells us when Amalek first appears, and it says that they came. Vayavo Amalek came, vayilachem im Yisrael, and they fought with Israel, berfidim, in a place called Refidim. And Chazal say Refidim, we call it Refidim, sherafu yideim min haTorah, that they loosened their hands, they let go of the Torah over there. And there's a very, very interesting insight here. Hine b'chol makom she'anu rotzim lomar ha'hepech milimud haTorah, anu omrim bitul Torah. You ever hear the term bitul Torah?
Yeah.
What does bitul mean?
Making maybe void of Torah?
Yeah, it's actively
Denigrating.
right, but bitul is like the opposite of lekayem. Lekayem means to establish something. Bitul is to to be mevatal, make it like it's not there, to get rid of it, right? So it seems a little, it's funny, seems a little harsh. Any minute that I'm not learning Torah, I'm actively uprooting the Torah? No, I'm not learning Torah. What, I'm destroying Torah, I'm being mevatal the Torah any minute that I don't learn Torah? So, meaning the opposite of learning Torah is bitul Torah. It should be not learning Torah. It shouldn't be to be mevatal the Torah. That's a little strong, right? That's how we talk about it. When you could learn and you don't, you're being mevatal Torah. It's like the Torah already exists somehow and you're destroying it. As opposed. Okay. V'kana anu motzim bitui chadash. Here, in the case of the story with Amalek, we find a new phrase, rifayon yadaya. Rifayon yadaya means to let go. The hands, meaning the hands should be holding on in a vigilant way, and they let go. So, rifayon yadayim min Torah. So Torah here, now, it's not that you're being mevatel it, it's that also Torah needs to be held tightly, and the second you let go, right, something terrible happens. So what is this rifayon yadayim, letting go? Mahu perusho shel chidush zeh. What is this new phraseology? What is this coming to tell us? Ela sheshuv heim advarim. Rifayon yadayim pirusho hefsid hakarat hachashivut shel hadavar shebo tzrichut hen hayadayim liitasek. When you have, let's say, something that is very fragile or requires extreme attention to maintain it when you're holding it, so the second you avert attention, active attention from that, active energy, it's lost, right? So Torah somehow is the kind of thing that you need to be holding. You're holding, and it needs to have some sort of vigilant hold. And the second you let go of it, it's some sort of destructive act. Here, I'll read it again. Hefsed hakarat hachashivut shel hadavar, the lack of recognizing the importance of something, is the idea, is meaning something that's, hakarat hachashivut shel hadavar, the recognition of the importance of a thing, is the same thing as saying, tzrichot hen hayadayim litasek. What's important? Things that you need to be involved in. Meaning one level, when we talk about the recognition of importance, that is the abstraction that you're accepting that there's something important in the world. But that demands then your involvement. Your involvement, the way we say your involvement in Lashon HaKodesh is yadayim, your isuka yadayim, to get your hands involved, right? So we're talking about this aspect now where your hands need to be involved. So rifayon yadayim means that your hands aren't involved with something that you recognize to be important. That's the idea. Meaning something that you've already established to be important, that demands the interaction of your yadayim. Rifayon yadayim is when that hakara, where you're not engaging in that in the way that you know you should. Okay? Pirusho, once again, the explanation of this idea of the words rifayon yadayim, letting go of the hands, this means hefsed, a loss of hakarat hachashivut, the recognition of importance, shel hadavar shebo tzrichot hen hayadayim litasek, of a thing that the hands need to be involved with. Okay? Kisha'adam mafsid hakarat hachashivut shel ha'esek, when somebody loses track of the importance of his involvement, of this enterprise, hu marbet yadav. He's relinquishing, he's letting things slip through his fingers, as we would say in English, right? Okay, v'alkein dafka beparshat Amalek shekol inyano hu harisat binyan hachashivut. So specifically regarding Amalek, in the context of this idea where Amalek is all about the destruction of any sort of structure of importance, of recognition of importance, nimtza hu halashon hazahav shel chachamim rafu yedeim min haTorah. So he's saying that there is the chachamim turned refidim to this idea of rifayon yadayim, because they're saying there was an attendant rifayon yadayim to Am Yisrael that allowed for a force whose whole essence is the destruction of importance to follow. So if you, something that's really like hold the baby, hold the baby, hold the baby, don't let go, right? You're carrying a baby. You know, right? You're not involved anymore. You get lazy with what you know about how to care for the baby, right? So now the attack on, well, who said the baby's important? If you're not acting like the baby's important, okay, so now there's an attack on the baby. That's what it seems to be. Meaning that opened the door. Okay, the whole inyan of the story of Parshat Amalek over here, hu harisat binyan hachashivut, the destruction of those structures of importance and reality. Nimtza hu halashon hazahav. That's where we find this golden language of the Chachamim, where they read into this name of Refidim, Rafu Yedeim min haTorah. Okay. Ubnei Torah hanachnasim b'divrei Torah shel hilchot deot. By the way, that's an explanation. We started off, we said there's something called bitul Torah. That's the idea of bitul Torah, because something that you know is important and you could be engaged in it and you don't, you're basically, that's starting this whole process. That's the equivalent. That's the rifayon that ends up destroying the Torah. Okay, uvnei Torah hanechnasim b'divrei Torah shel hilchot deot v'chovat halvavot. The students of Torah that enter into the words of Torah, of words of expansive knowledge of God and the obligations on our hearts that demands. Tzrichim ladat. Those people who I'm talking to, says the Pachad Yitzchak, tzrichim ladat, you have to know, ki mitzvat zechirat maaseh Amalek, the whole mitzvah of remembering that which Amalek did to us, mechayevet otam lahamid et atzmam b'hamatzav ha'hafachi shel raf yedei min haTorah. So to be engaged in the mitzvah, a true fulfillment of the mitzvah of the story of Amalek, means it obligates one to have a higher acceptance and a recognition of the importance of being involved in Torah, not having rifayon yadayim in Torah. Meaning, of everything we said here, one of the basic, most practical ways that applies to us, being involved in the battle of Amalek and remembering what it did, it's for us to bolster that holding of the Torah. Eitz chaim in the machasikim, but not to have rifayon yadayim. To constantly find ways to be in a situation of chizuk yadayim, strengthening the hands when it comes to Torah. Chizuk yadayim b'Torah, and what does it mean to strengthen your hands in regards to Torah? Perusho hu shelo litein makom l'kirur harticha shebelev. You know what that means? Don't ever let that fiery passion in your heart cool down. Hanovat mitoch hakara bin nooroteha, that fiery passion that flows forth from the recognition of the awesomeness shel chashivut haTorah, of the importance of Torah, ve'ezuz kvoda, and the mightiness of her dignity and honor. Baruch, yes, sure.
At what stage did Amalek's fate become non-redeemable?
When according to Bilam, it's the fact that they attacked right then and there.
So are we saying that before they attacked, they had the...
That's what the Pasuk says. The Pasuk says that they have no tikkun because of the fact that they're reshit, and that's the event of Parshat Amalek at the end of Beshalach, and because that ultimately destroyed the world. Even if Am Yisrael got rid of them then, or they militarily they were okay, they never won. Amalek always is still winning.
And why is it that Amalek has to be around till the very end?
Because the only thing that can destroy it is ushering in tikkun. You know, the pasuk reports that there's going to be a milchama with Amalek dor dor.
Yeah.
That's before Bilam said what he said. The pasuk already said that it's inevitable. We'll be battling. Meaning the whole story to get to the end can be contextualized as a battle with Amalek.
What's the connection of Bilam and Amalek in this context?
Oh, because Bilam said, "Reish goyim Amalek, va'achrito adi ovid." That's the whole mimer that we did. We're going to take ideas of Reisha to step further soon in the next mimer, which is really lovely.
The Zohar says that Bilam and Amalek will go like
The Gemara, there's deep Torah in that. There, I
I
could spend an hour explaining that to you. The Gemara says, you know what Bilam's just desserts are in the Olam HaEmes? You know the Gemara in Gittin?
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Right, he's boiling in a hot pot of his own semen. Do you know why? Mida Keneged Mida. The Gemara says that he said, how can you say God is involved in the world? And then he says, I'll call tipa v'tipa, zayeh tzadik v'zayeh rasha. How could you say that God's involved in the world and that he says on each sperm, who's going to be a tzaddik? He knows who's going to be a tzaddik, who's going to be a rasha, when the whole nature of sexual reproduction and biology is random. If there was only one sperm out of who knows how many, right? More than 1 million, millions maybe, right? That gets an egg, then why do you have to lose 99% all the time? If God made a perfect world, why is there wastage? How can you tell me that God's involved? You see that yes, there's a God, but in the level of reality down here, everything's random. That is the lesson that he taught Amalek. Bilam is seen as the Rebbe of Amalek. Amalek says mikra. Mikra is happenstance. It's the same word as keri, which means seminal issue. Okay? The whole idea is, don't tell me that God's involved in the world because there's randomness. Yes, that's the pour of Haman. Etc., etc. These are deep themes, but Bilam is seen as the spiritual progenitor, the Rebbe, the dark wizard who taught Amalek.